in a lot of the in these old sites, archaeological sites, remains of chemicals, all sorts of different things. They used to combine a whole load of things together. And it seems that actually in that kind of Greek-speaking world, they talk a lot about the kind of the ancient world in you know, the pagan context, but also going back to the Elysian mysteries, also the Egyptian mysteries. This all seemed to come through the Christian tradition as well, and it was actually something that was very much in the practice of the early Christian church. So I thought that was really interesting to see that actually they're getting some hard science on this, the connection that actually Christianity really was coming from a place that was deeply imbued with altered states, you know, so these spiritual experiences, a lot of the stuff that has come down to us actually does, from in its origins, have a very mystical and psychedelic meaning. It's not necessarily the Christianity we know as now, but rediscovering the roots maybe will be a way to understand more deeply what Christianity is about, and maybe even to kind of renovate it and bring it forward. So that's kind of a little background of why psychedelic Christian Zen, this kind of three things coming together, and you know, learning also from what Christianity can kind of show us in terms of also aiding our own let's say psychedelic journey, in the same way as with meditation, that these can be helpful things that can kind of work together. Okay, so that's kind of the background. Does that make sense? Is everyone can hear me, I imagine. I'm not just talking, yeah? Okay, yeah, good, all right. All right, so I'm gonna basically describe my own take on this, okay? Because that's a very general kind of take. So maybe a good place to start with, if you take psychedelics, there's probably three things that you really need to be aware of that are really, really important when you begin. Okay, the first obviously is, what is it that you're taking? So you have to know what it is, the quality as well. Okay, so that's really important, and the dosage. Okay, so how much and what the effect will be. So that's the first thing, is the quality and the dosage of what it is that you're taking. That's really important. The second really important thing is, which is very well known for people who take this seriously, is set and setting. So people who take psychedelics recreationally, just, you know, going for a party and the rest of it, you know, obviously that you can do that, and that's fine. It can create problems if it's very uncontained. So if you want to take psychedelics in a way that will be transformative, and also that will be safe, that there won't be risks that you'll spin out and have a bad trip, and you know, and all of the horror stories that you hear, then you need to really look at the set and setting. And set and setting is basically short for, the set is the mindset, so that you're in a good frame of mind. You don't come to it in a, you know, in a bad mood or kind of anxious or all sorts of other things going on. And the setting is the environment that you take it in, so that you're with people you trust, you're kind of in a safe place, you know, nothing, no surprises going to jump on you, and you know, maybe even in a ceremonial setting, so that it's something that is actually quite structured, so that you feel contained and safe, and you can have the experience in a safe way. So set and setting is super important. The third thing, people who take psychedelics regularly, is very important that you know about, is, especially if you take a high dosage, a breakthrough dosage as they call it, is about ego dissolution. So there is a point where it's as if you've transcended, or you've dissolved, or you've lost your ego. And that, in a way, is kind of, for a lot of people, that's the aim. That's why we're doing this, because we're kind of dealing with ourselves, our psychology, our ego, and we're using this to somehow go beyond that, beyond our kind of egotistical thought structures and all the rest of it. But if you're not practicing that, that can be quite a frightening, scary thing. So it's a really important thing to be aware of when you go into these experiences, that is something that can happen, and to be able to navigate that. All right, so those are the three things to start with. So I want to start with, well, a little thing that's stuck in my mind. I was at the Medicine Festival a few weeks ago, which was apparently the only festival that was allowed to happen in England because of the COVID thing, but it went ahead, which is actually brilliant because it's about the medicine. It's about kind of bringing, it was actually connecting with tribes in the Amazon and bringing medicine, as they call ayahuasca, and these kind of psychoactive plants to try and heal us in different ways. So it was a wonderful festival, you know, lots of people doing really great work on that. There was a really nice little circle that I got involved in where we were basically talking about how best to bring the psychedelics in a positive way to our culture and how to deal with it, partly in a clinical setting, but also in a non-clinical setting. And then there was a debate that came up, which I thought was really interesting, about basically, should we be controlling it or not? So some people said you need to control it. You need to have very clear, delineated ways of taking, administering, all the rest of it, so that it's scientifically, you know, verifiable and the rest of it, and we have a very careful, controlled framework that we can work with. Other people are saying, no, you can't do that. You have to just let the psychedelic do its thing. You have to, you know, let it free, you know, and go with the thing. And so there was a bit of a debate between those two poles. Like some say, no, you've got to be careful, control the thing. The others were saying, no, let it go. A little bit like the debate in the 60s in a way between Huxley, who was much more cautious, and Timothy Leary said, yeah, no, just like get everyone high, put LSD in the water, it'd be great, and all the rest of it. So there is a little tension there, I think, generally in the psychedelic community and how we use them. There was someone in the circle who does retreats with truffles in Holland, and she came up, she said that she had a little vision in her tent in the festival, which was quite nice, that there was a spider in the corner of her tent, and she just was there watching it for ages, just building its web. And she just said, that's how it is. You just let it weaves itself. So you just allow the psychedelic to weave the web, and then and that's it. So she was basically arguing for be free, let it go, and it will take you wherever it needs to take you. I wasn't sure if I was 100% on that camp. And after the circle, I then started to reflect on it, and I thought, okay, that's a lovely image about the spider. But actually, if you think about how a spider makes a web, first it throws out a thread to connect two places. And then it starts to build the web by creating radials, which are the lines of the web that go outwards, that they're called create a frame. And then the spider can start to weave the web in spirals around the frame. But without the frame, there would be no weaving of the web. So in a way, I thought that was a perfect, beautiful image of maybe the combination of having some kind of frame on which you can then weave the web of your experience, so that the freedom of the psychedelic can happen if you have a firm frame on which that can unfold. So I thought that was a lovely image. And then the thought about the model that I've been developing, actually what it is it's a frame. It's a frame that's not too rigid, so it doesn't mean that you're constricted and you can't experience what you need to experience individually. It's very flexible, like a web. It's very loose, so that it's open to your own experience, but it gives a structure, and it gives something which you can work with so that you can use a psychedelic in a productive way without getting kind of like blown off, you know, in all sorts of directions, and it gets lost in the ether. So this is basically the idea of the frame, which is what I'm going to be trying to explain. And the frame ultimately is the set and setting. So in terms of the set, your mindset, the mindset that you bring to the experience is that you have a frame that is robust enough to be able to take whatever experience you're going to have. Yeah. So this is like the container that you have for the experience. So the set and setting is the frame, basically. So that's basically what what I'm trying to do to make the most positive experience. So that's the set and setting, or the frame. Right, the third thing that I mentioned was the ego dissolution, okay, that you lose your sense of ego. In terms of the neuroscience, when they look at how the effect of psychedelics on people's consciousness on the brain, what they call that is they've identified a network in the brain called the default mode network, which you might have heard of if you've looked a little bit into this, which is basically how your brain, the network of the neurons in your brain that is most active when you're not doing anything particular. So you're kind of thinking about yourself, you're worrying about stuff. It's the default mode, is where your brain goes to as a default, yeah? So it's a lot of it is connected to your self-image and self-maintenance of your ego. So it's kind of analogous to what we colloquially call of as ego. They call it the default mode network. So this is basically dissolving the ego, inhibiting the default mode network. This is what we find that psychedelics and meditation both do. That they've done this using scanners, and they found that actually what happens is this default mode network gets inhibited, which means that it's kind of like it gets switched off. When it gets switched off, it opens up all sorts of other possibilities that your brain, your mind can access and do, both with meditation and with psychedelics. So what I would like to do to start with is to basically give you a little model of what that default mode network might look like, not through a scanner, but through, using the imagination. So this is like the ego, or the default mode network. And it looks, I'm going to get this up on the screen. It looks like this. Let's find it here, maybe. There we go. Can you see that? So you might recognize this if you have any interest in Tibetan Buddhism, or in Buddhism generally. This is the Tibetan Wheel of Life. So I'll go through it a little bit. It's that creature that's kind of like devouring it is called Mara, that's death. So the Wheel of Life is held by death. And the idea is, traditionally, in the Wheel of Life, it's a kind of, you die and you're reborn in different realms. So it's kind of like the cycle of reincarnation. But it can also be seen as different states of consciousness. So actually, this is a very nice model of the ego, or the default mode network. Okay. I'll try and explain how that is. But let me just explain quickly. What I'd like you to focus on is these 6 realms. Okay, don't worry about the middle or the outside, but there's 6 realms around here. In the top, if you can see, there's a kind of like, these are gods in a kind of heavenly realm. At the bottom, these are kind of devils and demons in a kind of hell realm. All right, so those two, heaven and hell, are very obviously universal, and also something that maybe we can easily identify with in terms of psychedelics, because when you have a psychedelic experience, sometimes you can have an incredibly good trip, it's amazing, and suddenly you're transported into heaven. Everything is blissful, is amazing and wonderful, and you're in heaven. If it goes the other way, and you have a bad trip, you end up in hell. Everything is twisted and crazy, and it's as if you've been catapulted into hell. So heaven and hell are kind of, in a way, 2 very real and distinct altered states of consciousness that we can access, not just in psychedelics, but we can probably recognize it in our lives when we happen to be in a kind of mental state that is more heavenly or hellish. Okay, so that's kind of quite universal. They've got these other 4 realms as well. On the left of heaven here, this is the human realm. So this is kind of the realm of just everyday activities, just, spending time with family and friends and working and that kind of thing, and, doing business and taking your animals to market and whatever else they're doing in this picture here. It's just kind of like domestic, everyday, normal activities. This is the realm of the humans. So these are the humans, these are the devas, the gods. And then on this other side, at the top right, this is the asuras. These are called the fighting spirits, or the titans, giants, let's say. So this is all kind of mythological. And if you look carefully, you can see that there's actually a tree growing out of this realm, which is growing into the heavenly realm. And what these fighting spirits are doing is that they've climbed the tree, and they are basically invading heaven. They've all got their warrior gear on. They're trying to basically storm heaven. And the myth is that these giants or titans or fighting spirits are constantly at war with the gods. Okay, so that's their kind of myth. And the idea is that in this realm, you're a fighting spirit. So it's like everything is a kind of conflict and a struggle, and it's a power play that you have to overcome. Okay, so it's kind of warlike realm. So those are the top three. The bottom three are more problematic. I talked a little bit about hell, which is clear. You've got animals in the bottom right. So obviously in Buddhism, you can be reincarnated as an animal. But in terms of the symbolism of the ego, I'm taking this to mean, because often they're depicted as animals of burden, like domesticated animals. So this is kind of like a place of victimhood, that when you're in a place that you're being used and abused and you're basically a victim of other people, or feel that you are, this is where you end up, that you're kind of like a victim. The other side, this is the realm of the hungry ghosts. You might be familiar, if you're familiar with the work of Gabor Mate, he writes explicitly about hungry ghosts in relation to addiction. So that's basically what the hungry ghosts represent. Is if you're an addict, you're a hungry ghost, you're never satisfied. As much as you take in, eat, or whatever, you will always be craving more, and you'll never be satisfied. So they live in some kind of wilderness there. They have kind of distended stomachs and thin necks, and that symbolizes the inability to basically be satisfied. So these 6 realms, basically I've used them as a map. So this is like a frame, the first frame of what the ego is when we're in our default mode. Just normally throughout life, we move through these different realms. Sometimes we're in a kind of addict space, we're craving something, and then we're here. Sometimes we're having a wonderful time, we're in heaven, we're here. So we basically can jump around different places in the wheel. So that's a picture of, let's say, the ego, the default mode, naturally, as we are. Okay, and it goes on and on and on. And this is kind of like, for Buddhists, this is a kind of nightmare, that the point of nirvana, of Buddhist practice and meditation, is that you want to get off this wheel, because it just goes on forever and there's no end to it. All right, so in terms of how it works with the ego, to make it personal to yourselves, the one way to understand it is to think, for example, to ask yourself, okay, so starting with the demon at the bottom. If you ask yourself the question simply, what do I hate? So what would I like to wipe off the face of the earth? What do I really, what gets me enraged and would I like destroy and kill? What do I really hate? This is the thing that then can bring out your demon, okay, which is this energy of anger and hatred and rage. Okay, so the question, what do I hate, is a very good way to identify the places where you can go to this place. All right, the victim realm. Let me just, okay, this is a picture of the Tibetan book thing. Let me just get another image up, which is, which is my modernized version of it, and then it may be clearer, because that's a bit kind of fussy, that one. Let me see. So if we go, here we go. Right, so this is my version. Right, this is my version of what I just described. Can you see that? All right, so maybe this is a little bit clearer. So as you see, I've put the names here. So heaven, the people who live in heaven, I call them devas. Okay, so it's kind of like a little bit derogatory there. Hell is demons. The Titan realm, I call them Muppets. These are the fighting spirits. The human realm, I call them Muggles. You might be familiar with that from Harry Potter. I'll explain those in a minute. Hungry ghost realm, addicts, as I explained, and the animal realm is victims. Okay, so the questions to ask about when you're in hell, what is it that you hate? And then you can identify what your demons are, okay? The victim realm, the question to ask yourself, what do you fear? What do you worry about? What are the things, you know, when you get into that mode of again, negativity, but just worry, fear, anxiety. This is the place of victimhood, where you feel that you're being bullied or taken advantage of. So what do you fear? What do you worry about? When you're in the addict space, obviously, what are you addicted to? What do you crave? What things, you know, pull you in? Is it substances? Is it, you know, the usual, you know, alcohol and coffee, or is it some, you know, more intangible things? You know, maybe your phone, whatever. So all the things that you maybe would say that you're addicted to, you're in this realm. Okay, the Muggles in the human realm. The question there is, what is comfortable for you? What is homely, cozy, familiar? What is your family for you? What is the place where you can, you know, you put your slippers on and you just feel completely at home and safe and comfortable and familiar? So that, you know, it's this is, then you're in the human realm. Okay, cup of tea, that, you know, that kind of thing. Titan realm, the Muppets. The question there is, what do you fight for? What is your fight? What gets you going in terms of what, you know, what you really need to change in the world as a fighting spirit? So what, you know, what is your mission in terms of changing the world? So I'll explain why I call these Muppets and Muggles in a minute. The Diva, then the question there is, what makes you special? So what things are your particular talents? What are you good at? What are you proud of? What makes you special? So when you are in your element, you know, and you feel kind of superior to other people in a sense, you may be a bit of a diva. Yeah, you may be a bit kind of overly, you know, proud and superior, you know, a bit of a superiority complex going on. Okay, so the point is that all of these are, well, parts of the ego, and that when you're in the ego, you're going to be in one or other of these places. So the existential question is, what do we do about it to be happy and balanced human beings? The traditional therapeutic answer is, for example, if you have an addiction problem, you go to a therapist and they will try to fix your addict. Yeah, if you have a problem with anxiety, they'll try and fix your victim. If you have a problem with, you know, anger management, they'll try and fix your demon. If you have a problem with narcissism, they'll fix your diva. If you have a problem with kind of narrow-mindedness, maybe, then you're Muggle. Okay, the Muggle, you probably know from Harry Potter, is someone who doesn't have any magic. So the idea is that it's a very, very narrow, closed view of the world where you're unaware of any potential realities beyond the limits of your own small, like, village or your small world that you've created for yourself. So that would be about having a kind of constrained, parochial, narrow view. Whereas the Muppet is more about having very strong beliefs that are maybe a little bit extremist, so there may be you may be a bit fanatical or fundamentalist or that kind of thing, maybe ideologically possessed, that you have this ideology that basically takes over, and that you have to basically follow this line, which is partly why I call it about Muppet, because in a way you're acting out from other ideologies that are kind of influencing your worldview, how you see the view, and how you behave. So the therapeutic answer to what you do is that you tinker, you fix, you try and work out how to make these less of a problem. Now, the problem is, as you see with all these lines that I've got here, is that each of them is connected to the other. So you can flow from one to another. You can be in the diva 1 minute, Muppet the next, or you can go straight to victim, or whichever way. So it is a little bit like a spider's web. The ego it's sticky. It's like you're a fly in a spider's web. You get stuck in one place. If you manage to get yourself out of it, then you end up getting stuck in another place. So the Buddhist insight is that even if you have all the therapy in the world and you have the best treatments for this, that, or the other, all that will happen is that you will just end up on another part of the web, another part of the wheel of life, and you'll just get stuck somewhere else. If you're lucky, maybe you'll be in heaven for a bit, which will be nice, but you won't stay there, because you will then go somewhere else. You'll flow down back to muggle, to addict. Maybe it's you're enjoying it so much you get addicted to whatever the beautiful Turkish delights they have in heaven, or whatever it is, and then suddenly you find yourself in the hungry ghost realm and you're an addict. So the point is that none of this is stable. You can't stay in any of these things permanently. Even in the human realm, in the muggle realm, you however safe you feel that you make your little cozy house, you will not stay there. You will get pulled to another realm, and round and round and round you go. So this is a kind of slightly nightmarish vision of what life in the ego is. It's like you're basically living on a spider's web, getting flung around from one part of the ego to the other. So you can't fix it. That's the conclusion of the Buddhists. So what do you do about it? Well, that goes back to the third point I was saying about working with psychedelics, which is ego dissolution. So you dissolve your ego. Or, as I said as well, you can say, in terms of neuroscience, you inhibit the default mode network. So to inhibit the default mode network means you don't try and fix this, you turn it off. You just turn it off. You turn the switch off and it's gone. So that's the kind of radical, let's say, spiritual way, as opposed to, let's say, the psychological or the psychedelic way. Now, obviously, with psychedelics, if it's just you switch it off and then have a great time and then switch it back on again, it could be that that's completely wasted, that you don't go anywhere. You just kind of like have a bit of a break, a little holiday from your ego, and then back you are on the web afterwards. So it's not as simple as just switching it on and off, or turning it on and off like a tap. But there is a very important thing about how to forget this whole thing and to try to create something new. So that's basically what my frame is based on. The first step is to forget the self, dissolve the ego, inhibit the default mode network. The second step is then to build a new self on a different foundation, which is not based on these negative archetypes, these ego states that we generally go around in the wheel of life. So the thing about dissolving the ego, forgetting the self, inhibiting the default mode network, is something that Dogen Zenji, one of the most famous Zen masters, medieval Zen master, can you see that? Yeah. Okay. So this is something that Dogen Zenji, who had a monastery in Kyoto, this is what he said: to study the self is to forget the self. To forget the self is to be actualized by myriad things. When actualized by myriad things, your body and mind, as well as the bodies and minds of others, drop away. No trace of enlightenment remains, and this no trace continues endlessly. So this is a kind of quite a famous thing in Japan that Dogen Zenji said. The main point, okay, it gets mystical. The main point here is the first point: to study the self is to forget the self. So this is the beginning of the path to enlightenment. You have to forget yourself. And in Zen, this is a very key element of their practice, which it should probably be obvious. So that's an example of Zen, advising us to forget the self. You don't fix the self, you just forget it. Okay, so that's the direct method. Okay, we also have it in Christianity. So here we go. Here's some examples in the Christian tradition of dying to yourself. Again, not fixing it, but dying it. So the closest thing in the Bible is probably where Romans 6, chapter 6, verse 6, where Paul writes, our old self was crucified. So in the Christian tradition, they talk about being crucified with Christ as a, or also, or being baptized through the crucifixion, basically dying to be reborn. So it's the very ancient archetype idea of death and rebirth. Crucifixion, the resurrection, is basically the Christian version of the death of the self and the rebirth in a new way. Sometimes they talk about the old man and the new man. So here in Corinthians, he says, therefore, if anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. The old has passed away. Behold, the new has come. So again, like with Zen, it's a very radical transformation. You die, you're reborn, the old passes away, something new comes to birth. So the whole of that system of the ego is gone. Here, you probably heard this one from Galatians. I have been crucified with Christ, and I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. So here, again, it's very explicit that you, by dying to yourself, somehow a new birth, and in Christianity, it's the Christ, or the inner Christ, lives through you in a completely different way. So it's a different person. You can't be more explicit than that. It's not you anymore. And then John as well, there's a passage, chapter 3, Jesus answered him, truly, truly, I say to you, unless one is born again, he cannot see the kingdom of God. So the idea of being born again, obviously, is you go through a death process and then you're reborn, you're born again. And this goes way back to the mystery traditions, again, of Greece and of Egypt, and a lot of ancient mystery schools, where they actually would go through an initiation process which would be incredibly intense, where they would feel that they were actually dying, or that they would feel they had died, and then have this experience of being reborn, often with the aid of some kind of psychedelic. All right, so that's basically the thing about forgetting the self. So if I just show you again the wheel of life, I just want to point out, where do you get to if you manage to, where is it? If you do manage to forget the self, what are you then? Who are you if you forget yourself? Where is it? Excuse me. Oh, maybe I shared it already. Sorry, I will just get this up again. Sorry, 1 second. Not the cross. Bear with me. Okay. This guy. Right, this one. Okay, there. Okay, right. So, okay, so let's share that. Should be here now. Here we go. All right. Okay, so here's the wheel of life again, with the 6 realms, the different ego states. So what happens when you forget all of this and you step off the wheel of life, which is the aim, to nirvana? So this is samsara, which is the cycle of birth and death that goes on and on and on, stuck in the spider's web. If you look in the top right corner, there is this figure riding on a cloud, which is off the wheel completely. This is the Buddha. So symbolically, what this represents is that if you manage to not act from any of these places, from the ego, any of these realms, you don't exist in any of them, you are automatically a Buddha, which means that you basically are expressing your Buddha nature, which is your pure essential being, not filtered or mediated through these different ego states and ego structures. So you are a Buddha. That's simply, you don't have to do anything else. You don't have to like train or do any special practice or anything else. Buddha means the awakened one. Anyone who steps off the wheel and has transcended the ego is a Buddha. That's it. You are a Buddha. You are expressing your Buddha nature. So that's the aim through, well, obviously meditation in terms of Buddhism, but with psychedelics as well. However, whenever that moment, it can be an instant where you step off the wheel, you are a Buddha. All right. So we can, right, so another way of saying that, let me bring up another thing here. Because the ego is very, very connected to the mind. Basically, when we're thinking about ourselves, we're in the mind. So if we can transcend our mind, then we can connect to other levels and other dimensions of our being that is not purely, let's say, on the horizontal level of social interaction and of how we think about ourselves and other people and the world and the rest of it. And we can begin to connect with the vertical dimension, which is who we are in the microcosm, when we go right down into our very being, of our essence, in terms of how we're made, our bodies, and the macrocosm, how we connect to the bigger reality. So once we've inhibited the default mode network, we naturally connect with what I call the ray of creation. We are kind of like the conduit of creation, that we connect all of these elements. So let me just explain this briefly. These are based on Egyptian gods, apart from the last two. And they basically go through each level of reality that exists in the universe that we basically embody. So the first one is emptiness, Amun. So if you think of it in terms of the universe, Amun represents what, before the Big Bang, let's say, which wasn't displaced by the universe, but kind of coexists with the universe, because that emptiness is kind of still there. It's a bit of a mystery, but this is the idea of emptiness or the void, obviously very central to Buddhism, and also to Christian mysticism, is getting in touch with the emptiness inside yourself, so that there is this spaciousness that kind of precedes any manifestation. So if you think of it in terms of the evolution of the universe, we begin with emptiness, Amun, then we have Ra, energy. So this is the Big Bang, the huge explosion of energy that created the universe, that's represented by the sun god Ra, which is our little window into the unimaginable energy of the universe. If you think of all the suns, all the galaxies, all the solar systems in the universe, how much energy is being pumped out by all the time. This is Ra. And we can experience that within ourselves in terms of our inner energy. So as we know as well through physics, the splitting of the atom, one little atom, tiny little thing, you split it, you get an atom bomb. incredible amount of energy. E equals mc squared. Within every atom of our being, there is this energy. And this energy is something that we can connect with through practices. So again, Kundalini yoga, different practices we can, and also psychedelics, we open up to this kind of, this energetic force within us, light and energy. So this is Ra. Okay, the next one is Atum, which means the all in Egyptian, was also an Egyptian ancient god. This used to mean matter. So this is basically physical stuff, atomic stuff. So actually, by coincidence, it sounds like atom. So that's an easy way to remember it. So that's basically the manifest world of inanimate matter. Okay. And then beyond that, again, we're evolving the universe. We get to life, Ka. Ka is the life force in Egyptian. And this is basically organic cellular life as we know it on Earth that has evolved from matter somehow. We don't know, it's a mystery, but this is also obviously what we embody. We have a life force and we can connect to in our body, and this is Ka. Okay, and then beyond that, we have the unified consciousness of who we are, which we experience as the mind, and this is Ba, which they call the soul. And this is what I mean about the default mode network, or the ego, is basically mainly located in the mind, in Ba, and the activity of it is kind of like on a horizontal. And that's where we spend most of our waking life and most of our consciousness, and we kind of forget all this other stuff. We forget about the emptiness, energy, matter, and life within us because we're too busy. We're too busy in our mind. We're too busy, whatever it is, working, watching stuff, and chatting to people. It's all in the mind on this kind of horizontal, let's say, social plane, and that's kind of where we're stuck, kind of thing. So the point is to try and connect with the vertical. Beyond the mind, so if you think of the mind or Ba, or the soul, let's say, of the organism, every living creature on the earth has Ba, has this soul, this consciousness, this mind. Again, this is connected a little bit to the panpsychist idea that all these sentient beings are sentient, they're conscious. Okay, so they're all minds. There are trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions of different life forms on Earth. There's over 7 billion human beings, all these different minds doing their different thing. If you follow the way that evolution has gone so far, it could be that at some point, or maybe it's already happening, all of these minds somehow create some unified consciousness, which could be a planetary consciousness, which I call Gaia. This is quite an interesting idea that maybe we can talk about later. That in the same way that, for example, life is based on a cell, which is a unified entity that is made up of all these trillions of elements, atoms within it, the way that all the cells together combine together to create one organism as a unified organism, and then all the organisms maybe will combine again to create another unity, which is the planet. So that this scheme is basically all about these multiple entities that create a higher order, transcendent, unitary entity. Okay, that's the kind of idea, the vertical. You can claim that, but anyway, that's the idea. So we get the planetary consciousness, Gaia consciousness, and then if you extend that further to many planets in the universe, maybe conscious planets that again connect, like atoms creating cells or cells creating organisms, etc., the same scheme, then at some point you get Jah, which is the universal consciousness, the consciousness of the whole universe. So the idea is of this ray is that what's happening is that the universe is itself becoming conscious through time, so that the whole evolution of the universe is the gradual waking up of a universal being, and that we as human beings are key elements of that happening, because without us, we don't, this step to Gaia is broken. So the ray of creation is basically transmitted through us, and we are almost like the the lightning rod, or the connector between these things. So anyway, I'm just explaining this because this is the first step after ego dissolution, where we then connect with a larger identification with who we are beyond our ego. So beyond our mind and our self-concern, we connect with much, with a microcosm way down into the emptiness and energy and matter and life, and we connect upwards with the planet, Gaia, and with the universe. And by connecting in this way, we kind of minimize our ego and re-establish our alignment with the ray of creation. Okay, so this is going to be important because this is part of the meditation that we're going to try out in a minute. And the way I do it is that I connect each of these 7 levels with one of the 7 chakras. So I hope you're familiar with the chakras. I don't have a picture of that, unfortunately, but if you're not, don't worry too much about it. Basically, the first one, Amun, is the root chakra. The sacral chakra, Ra, energy, is in your hara, just under your belly button. Atom is your solar plexus chakra. Ka, life force, is in your heart chakra. The mind is in the throat, is throat chakra. Gaia is the third eye, the Ajna chakra, and the Jah, universal consciousness, is the crown. So it doesn't matter if you don't get it exactly right, but that's the basic scheme. So the idea of this meditation is that by using the mantra, so this is a mantra, Amun, Ra, Atom, Ka, Ba, Gaia, Jah, so using these syllables to identify these different elements of who we are in a vertical, not just a horizontal way, in a broader sense, we can connect it also physically in our body to the chakras so that it actually becomes embodied, so that we really, really connect in a deep way, both through the sound of the mantra, the meaning of the mantra, and the embodied and the chakras that they correspond to. Another kind of cool thing is, obviously, if you did draw this and you had the horizontal of the mind in terms of our social standing and how we think about, and have this vertical line, you get a traditional Christian cross. So, the ray of creation also is actually represented in the cross, that you have the vertical and the horizontal. And what we're trying to do, you don't get rid of the horizontal, you have to live in the world and have a social ego kind of relationship with the world, but you have the vertical as the thing that keeps you solid. So the vertical and the horizontal together is the ray of creation. Okay, how are we doing? Should I pause there? Is that making sense so far? You all cool? Yeah? Yeah? All right. Okay. I'll plow on, okay, because there's a bit more to do. All right. So if we go back to, once we've done the ray of creation, we're aligning. I call this alignment meditation. Yeah. So the idea is that we're aligning with all these elements. We're aligning the chakras, aligning with these levels of reality. The next alignment is to do, first of all, we're going to dissolve the wheel of life, and we're going to do that by, if you look again at the wheel, can I get the wheel again or not? No. Okay. Anyway, yes, I can. No, I can't. Never mind. You can remember the wheel. It's got 6 points. Now, the 6 points make a cross, but the cross has 2 horizontal. So if you remember, I'll just recap quickly. You can imagine a circle around here with being the wheel of life, yeah? At the point, at the end of each of these, to create this cross, you have each of the different archetypes. At the top, you have the diva. At the bottom, you have the demon. And then the top horizontal, you have the muggle on the left and the muppet on the right. Bottom horizontal, you have the addict on the left and the victim on the right. Yeah? So this is a very simple way to transform that circle, the wheel of life, into a cross, a double cross, to connect these different archetypes. Yeah? Does that make sense? Okay, so think of it now as a cross, not as a wheel. All right, so you're not going around, but these things are connected with these vertical and horizontal lines. Now, the next part of the meditation what we do here is we, again, try and inhibit those points using the, using a mantra, a very famous mantra, again, Buddhist mantra. You may have heard of this, Om Mani Padme Hum. Okay, Om Mani Padme Hum, the jewel in the lotus. This is one of the most famous central prayers or mantras for Buddhists. 6 syllables. The 6 syllables, Om Mani Padme Hum. Okay, this is what the Tenzin Gyatso, the 14th Dalai Lama says, mean that independence of the practice of a path, which is an indivisible union of method and wisdom, you can transform your impure body, speech, and mind, so this is the ego, or the default mode networks, into the pure, exalted body, speech, and mind of a Buddha. All right, so this is a kind of vehicle, as they would see it, to make that transition as like a bridge from the ego, the wheel of life, to the Buddha's state of consciousness in a pure body, speech, and mind, that kind of thing. So there are 6 syllables. Om, Ma, Ni, Pad, Me, Hum. So the way we use those 6 syllables is that we superimpose them on the cross. So I won't bring up the cross again, but the idea is that you start, again, this cross is embodied. All right, I forgot to say that. So if you think about a cross, the usual crossing that you do in a church. So when you say, in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, you start with the forehead, in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. So I'll put off of it so you can see that. So yeah, you use that's the classic crossing yourself of the Christian tradition. This crossing is energetically significant. It's not just an accident that we do that. Obviously, it represents the cross, but it is also touching very important chakras. So that in the name of the Father, we touch the Ajna chakra, the third eye, the Son, the heart chakra, and the Holy Spirit. These are 2 minor chakras on the shoulders. So we have a kind of like a cross, mini cross here. Now, if we're thinking chakras and we're thinking energetics and we're thinking of Kundalini yoga and all the rest of it and the Eastern tradition, the thing that's immediately obvious, if an Indian sadhu or yogi came and saw Christians doing that, they'd think that's great. You got to the heart, the Anahata chakra, but guys, what about the lower chakras? You're just like, you're top heavy. You're stopping. Why stop at the heart? So obviously, when you use the 7 chakras, you go from the root chakra all the way up, and that aligns everything together. These are the main energetic centers of the body. We can do that using a double cross. So instead of stopping at the heart, you can actually cross yourself by starting at the Ajna chakra, going right down, either to the root chakra or the sacral chakra, doesn't really matter. So you go right down. Let's do it with the sacral. And then the horizontal, the lower cross is your hips. So you go to the left hip, then the right hip, and then you do the shoulders and to the heart. So it's a double cross, right down to the hara or the sacral, left hip, left shoulder, right shoulder. So you've created a double cross. Now, how we use the Om Mani Padme Hum with this cross is that each of the 6 syllables, as you touch each of these points of the energetic cross that you're doing in your body, they basically are inhibiting these points of the wheel of life. So you start with Om, which then inhibits the diva, Ma for the muggle, Ni for the muppet, Pad for the victim, Me for the addict, Hum for the demon. So the Om Mani Padme Hum, you go through the mantra, touching each of these energetic points and basically quietening down the wheel of life. Okay, so it's kind of like a magic spell that you're using in your body crossing yourself using these 6 syllables, Om Mani Padme Hum, to basically erase, to forget that ego system, that self. Okay? So, oops. Just to bring home the whole thing of the double cross, so you don't think I'm crazy. This is the Santo Daime. Santo Daime, again, if you think of psychedelics in Christianity, this is what you will probably think of, because this is the biggest international Christian psychedelic church. And their sacrament is ayahuasca, and they were founded almost 100 years now in Brazil by Irenau, who is a rubber tapper. Anyway, it's a whole history about the Santo Daime, which is, you know, have a beautiful way of working with the ayahuasca, which is you're probably familiar with, but it's a very, very powerful psychedelic, the active ingredient being DMT mixed with harmony. This is their cross. So they used a double cross, which actually fits exactly right. Okay, it's not as symmetrical as the one that I'm using, but you can see that there is precedent for a double cross that has more of a depth, let's say, than just the purely the traditional Christian cross. Also, the Orthodox cross is also a double cross, but this is the Santo Daime, which is the Brazilian psychedelic ayahuasca church, which is a Christian denomination, and actually has legal usage of ayahuasca as being, because it's a religious organization, so they're given that, which is pretty cool. All right, so that's the cross. Now, where were we? So that's the Om Mani Padme Hum. Okay, right, we're getting there, Sorry, I'll speed up a little bit. So the next one, there's 2 little mantras that we use to basically make this transition. The first one is the Om Mani Padme Hum. The other one is also a very famous mantra, this one from Japan, and this is from Shin Buddhism, and they use this mantra, which you might be familiar with, or maybe not, Namu Amida Butsu, or Namu Amida Bu is the way that they do it. It's called the Nembutsu that they do it for short. So the meaning of this is, Namu is that you call, like name. Yeah, this is also from Sanskrit originally, but so Namu is I call. Amida is the cosmic Buddha. So Amida Butsu is Buddha, or Bu, so it basically means I call on the cosmic Buddha, meaning that you basically are connecting and aligning and calling your own Buddha nature, essentially your own essential Buddha, which is also connected with the cosmic Buddha that is the Buddha in all, okay? So this is also 6 syllables, Namu Amida Bu, okay? Butsu or Bu, we say Bu. So after doing Om Mani Padme Hum with the cross, going down like that, so it's left to right always, then we do the Namu Amida Bu. So this is kind of really kind of cements this idea. So there's these 2 very central Buddhist mantras that we use with the cross to basically make the transition from the wheel of life, the ego, to something else. Okay, now what is this something else? Now this is where we're going to get a little bit more into a bit more depth of what the new thing is. So let's share this, which is this. All right, here's the cross again. So what I've done here is basically, because remember when I showed you the wheel of life, and then there's the Buddha who's outside the wheel of life. Okay, so that's great. You're the Buddha, you're kind of like, you're not in your ego. But if you're going to be a personality, you will have qualities. You can't just be like a blank slate and that's it, and there's nothing. There has to be something within you that then will engage with the world. So you need a personality, you need an ego, you need a self, but not the kind of dysfunctional ego that you had before. So here's an alternative. This is an ego that you can build in place of the one that you've forgotten. So I'll talk you through it. So the first one, instead of a diva, which is all about ego, obviously, but it's kind of like basically about your, you know, kind of slightly narcissistic, that you're always thinking about how great you are, how much you know, that you know better than everyone else. The mystic represents this space where you accept that you don't know anything. So it's an openness, it's an unknowing, it's the emptiness of forgetting the self, of dissolving the ego. You get into a space of emptiness where you're basically a mystic. So this is the beginning of the rebuilding of yourself. The beginning is through the unknowing, the mystery, the emptiness, the void, the forgetting of the self, the dissolution represented by the mystic. In a lot of kind of meditative traditions and the rest of it, that's the aim. And then you're there, you're mystic, finish. Okay, great. And then you're like, roll credits. In my system, this is the beginning, not the end. You begin with the mystic. And then from there, you build yourself up. So from the mystic, we go right down to the shaman. So the idea is that here with the mystic, what's happened is that we've quietened down the mind, so that basically you stop thinking. You know, thoughts go, the ego goes, you forget everything. You forget who you are, you forget your name, you forget your friends, your family, your enemies, your everything. That it's all gone. Your mind is blank, okay? You're empty. Once your mind is blank, what happens is that you basically dive down into your body. And this is represented by the shaman. So instead of the demon, and in a sense, the demon represents all the, you know, the subconscious, unconscious, the id that Freud would use, and so, you know, your shadow, all these dark things that are in the basement of your psyche that are kind of like causing you to be negative and to snap at people and to act out and all the rest of it. That underworld, the underworld of all of these negative, you know, demonic kind of entities in your psyche. Again, in the Christian tradition, it's Christ went into the underworld. It's called the what is it called? Anyway, in the tradition, he goes into the underworld and he basically kind of battles with the demons there. Egyptian as well. I won't go into that. Osiris, etc. But the idea of the underworld. The shaman is the archetype of basically being able to inhabit your body and deal with the dark shadow, the negative emotions that is basically trapped within your body. If Eckhart Tolle talks very eloquently about this, and he talks about the pain body. So he talks about all the trauma and all the pain, all the negativity that we hold somatically within our bodies that can be released, but that can only be released when we actually really engage and go there energetically into the body. So the shaman is your ability to do that. So to come out of the head and, you know, the theory and everything else, and to go right into the body and to really deal energetically with all of this stuff. Enter the dragon. That's the phrase. Yeah, you enter the dragon of your body. Okay, and then as you do that, you find that you start to spontaneously, shamanic things start to happen to you. So you will have an awakening, Kundalini awakening, energies flowing through your body. Your breath will start to breathe itself in interesting and strange ways. You will begin to vocalize. Icaros, kind of chants might come naturally. All sorts of things start to happen that your body almost starts to take over, and you start to look like a shaman. Basically, you start to do all these shaman things. It's just like, it's almost like it happens naturally. This is when you go right into the body and you connect. Obviously easier with psychedelics that you can do that. Okay, from the shaman, then we go to the left hip. If you remember, okay, the wheel of life goes back to front. Is instead of the victim, we have the warrior. So the warrior is obviously the mirror image of the victim. Is basically about cultivating courage, cultivating resilience, cultivating endurance, will, all these qualities, again, that flows into the body from the shaman. So it's also about physical action. This is about being active, which is also, sidebar, the way that I'm trying to work with psychedelics, which may be different to people who take it either recreationally or just in a very, let's say, new agey hippie kind of way, maybe, is that it can get a bit kind of escapist, and it can get away from being very practical and active in the world. Whereas what I'm interested in is how do you kind of integrate this and bring this back into your life so that you're actually cultivating qualities that actually make you effective and present in the world, not just that you have these amazing experiences, in your trips or whatever. So anyway, the warrior is the mirror of the victim. Then we go to the mirror of the addict, which is the monk. So the monk is the archetype that represents the ability, or nun, obviously, monk or nun, okay, is the ability to basically overcome temptation, desire, cravings, all of the things that the addict is a slave to. The monk is able to transcend and do without. So a monk can live absolutely simply, just eat rice and drink water, and doesn't eat hardly anything, because the monk, it's an asceticism, has basically mastered the appetites. So mastered your all the appetites, and also opened the heart. So opened the devotional aspect of feeling, that maybe a lot of addictive behaviors is kind of somehow kind of trying to displaces it, but basically is surrogates for that. So what we have here is the vertical is the mystic shaman. So this is the vertical of the cross, the mystic shaman. The lower horizontal is the warrior monk. So warrior monk, again, together, if you think of, for example, the Shaolin monks, it's itself an archetype, warrior monks, yeah, a monk who is also, we have it in the Christian tradition. They were both, monks and also fighters, especially in the Crusades and all that kind of thing. All right, and then we go to the top horizontal, which is the philosopher instead of the Muppet. So if you remember, the Muppet was about being ideologically possessed, about having a very, very fixed idea of what's right or wrong, and always having to fight for what you believe is right, being quite blinkered and just like charging ahead. The philosopher is the ability to basically step back, take a perspective, take both sides. I understand it's not black and white, there's a yin yang thing going on, and to basically get a view that then frees you from this kind of ideological possession. So this is about using your mind in a much more critical, acute way and much more balanced way. So this is developing the philosopher archetype. And then the king or queen is about, instead of the muggle, and the muggle, if you remember, is all about home and basically your status, relationship to other people in your little village or the rest of it. The king is about connecting to your soul, king or queen, which is your essential sovereign nature beyond all of these keeping up with the Joneses kind of like comparisons in terms of status, like where am I in the pecking order. It's like once you find your soul, who you are really, you stop all that. You don't need to be doing that anymore. Okay, so this is the positive archetypes, the philosopher king, again going together as one, as that horizontal, that will take the place of the wheel of life. So instead of going round and round in this kind of like sticky web, we are cultivating a strong foundations for a personality that will be aligned, effective, and happy in the world. And so the three lines of the cross, the vertical, the mystic shaman. This is about, I call it the holiness line. So it's about being whole, but also kind of wholly connected. The warrior monk represents the virtue line, so cultivating the virtues, so it has this moral element. And the philosopher king, the wisdom line, so developing your wisdom. Okay, I'm going over time, so I'll cut to the chase, stop there. Last one very quickly. Okay, this is these are the 4 yogas from the Gita, which are connected to those archetypes. So if you remember, the warrior is follows the path of action, karma yoga. Okay, it's about service. It's about being very direct and active and being a warrior, but it's selfless service. So this is also connected to goodness. Okay, this is the other model in terms of the virtues. Then the next one was the monk, is Bhakti yoga. Number 3 here is the path of devotion. So Bhakti yoga is the yoga of devotion, of the opening the heart. This is the yoga of the monk. So we've got the warrior monk, karma yoga, Bhakti yoga. Jnana yoga, number 2, the path of knowledge, is the path of the philosopher. So this is about cultivating your mind, being able to think clearly and to basically see all sides of an argument and develop your Socratic wisdom and all that kind of thing. This is Jnana yoga. And Raja yoga, the 4th one, they call it path of discipline. It's often called the royal road. The Raja is the king, which is the direct road to the soul, to yourself, who you are in your essence, beyond the ego. Okay, so that's basically that. All right. Whew. Okay, I'll stop there. Sorry, I probably overdid that a little bit. Okay, any comeback on that before we try it out? Any questions or any?
There's a couple of questions that came in on the chat.
Okay.
If you can see the chat down the bottom.
Hang on a minute. Chat. Oh, I see. Oh, yeah. Ah, right. Okay. Ah, yes. Oh, lots of questions. Tom Pace. Okay. Right, that's a complicated question, that first one. Links to the things at the end. Okay, I'll do that. Interesting cross. Okay. All right. Ines asks, can I repeat which syllable corresponds to which energetic point? Okay. All right, that's a practical. I can answer that. All right. So basically, for the mantras, you always do the cross. The first cross for the Buddhist ones, you start at the 3rd eye and you work your way down. So the 6 points is like you're doing a zigzag, always from left to right. So you start with Om, and then it's Ma, the left shoulder, Ni, the right shoulder, Pad, the left hip, Me, the right hip, Hum, the root chakra. Okay, so you're basically doing it it's like a little lightning bolt kind of thing, like going down across the body. Yeah, so from the ajna, like that. Yeah, you're crossing yourself like a little lightning bolt going down. Om mani padme hum. And the same with the other one, Namu Amida Bu. Okay, so you're going 666, it's a zigzag. All right, that's how we do that. The name of the church is Santo Daime. Santo Daime means the saint. Santo Daime means give me in Portuguese. So the idea that the ayahuasca is, it's almost like they're asking for the ayahuasca to give what they need. Okay, so that became the name of the church, Santo Daime. S-A-N-T-O, Santo Daime, D-A-I-M-E, Daime, Santo Daime. All right. In the double cross, you don't include the crown chakra. Is this because it? Well, I don't. It doesn't include all the chakras. It just includes those basic ones to create the cross. So in a way, the whole system, because we use the 7 chakras first as a ray of creation, that combined with the cross then kind of covers everything. So in a way, we have the central spinal column, and we represent that with the 3rd eye and the sacral. But we also have these other 4 chakras, which aren't usually necessarily used, but what that does is that includes the whole of the body. So obviously the shoulder points include your arms, and the hip points include your legs. So as well as having the torso and through the spinal column and the nervous system, which is the 7 traditional chakras, we're also including the arms and legs, and then having a whole, a much broader energetic pattern of the body we'll be using there. Okay, it might be. All right. So that probably answers that. Okay, do people want to take a little break there maybe before we try out the meditation? If there are any other questions. I need to get some water because my throat's got really dry. Should take a couple of minutes if anyone needs a loo break or anything like that. Okay, and then we'll come back, and what I'll do is I will guide you through the meditation. If you can't remember everything, don't worry. But if you, but do what you can, and I'll slowly talk us through it. The last thing that I didn't mention at the final cross, very quickly, I mentioned a little bit about goodness. These also connect, the mystic, shaman, warrior, monk, philosopher, king, also connect with virtues. So we do peace, love, goodness, beauty, truth, consciousness, bliss. All right? Okay, so those are probably quite intuitive anyway. So that's how we finish with those. All right? Okay, let's take a couple of minutes and then we'll come back and we'll have a go. Okay? All right. Okay. All right. Okay. Is everyone back? Obviously, if you're not, you can't say. See, Wallace is coming. Okay, I'll give it another minute or two. Okay. So usually we have a kind of call and response thing going on, but I think it might, for this, first time, it might just be simpler if you don't have to worry about that and just follow. So I'll just do the guided thing, and there'll be a space where you would respond, but just don't worry about that. Just try and go with it. And again, if you can't remember the meaning of all these words, don't worry. The key is eventually, as it becomes familiar, obviously each of these syllables are then, kind of encapsulates the meaning of what it is, and then it just goes in. So Amun, for example, instantly it's emptiness. Yeah, Ra, instantly it's energy. Ra. I mean, that's kind of, so each of these, as you learn it, it becomes easier. So don't worry if you can't remember it all, but just see how it goes. Okay, so let's begin just by getting comfortable. So find a kind of comfortable position wherever you're sitting. If you can, try and get your sit as straight as possible. So again, this is about alignment, about trying to kind of align your chakras and let the energy flow. So if you can, if you need to support your back with a cushion, you can do that. Maybe put your feet firmly on the ground so you're supported, you have a base, or if you're cross-legged, obviously you've got a better base, that's fine. And find a point of stillness and balance. Just take a moment to settle down so you're relaxed, comfortable. Okay, this will probably take around 20 minutes, all right? So get yourself in this position where you'll be comfortable for about 20 minutes. So we begin with 3 deep breaths, in through the nose and out through the mouth. So come into the present. By leaving concerns for past and future. Fall still. And let go. All physical tension. Connect mind with the senses. Feel the weight of the body on the chair. The play of air on the face and hands. Include everything. Breath, body, smell, taste, sight, touch, sound. Breath, body, smell, taste, sight, touch, sound. And just rest for a few moments in open focus. There was something formless and perfect before the universe was born. It is serene, empty, solitary, unchanging, infinite, eternally present. It is the mother of the universe. No space, no time, no body, no mind. No space, no time, no body, no mind. Amen. Ra. Atum. Ka. Ba. Gaia. Ja. Amun-Ra, Atum-Ka, Ba, Gaya-Ja, Amun-Ra, Atum-Ka, Ba, Gaya-Ja. Om, Ma, Ni, Pad, Me, Hum, Om, Ma, Ni, Pad, Me, Hum, Na, Mu, A, Mi, Da, Bu, Na, Mu, A, Mi, Da, Bu. Mystic, Shaman, Warrior, Monk, Philosopher, King, Mystic Shaman, Warrior Monk, Philosopher King, Mystic Shaman, Warrior Nun, Philosopher Queen. Peace, love, goodness, beauty, truth, consciousness, bliss, peace and love, goodness and beauty, truth, consciousness, bliss. peace and love. Goodness and beauty. Truth, consciousness, bliss. Okay, so if you have your eyes closed, just gently open them. And bring yourself back to the room you're in. Okay, I hope you heard that. Yeah? Okay, great. There we are. So that's the basic. That's the basic meditation. And obviously, with practice, you can do it yourself when you learn it. And yeah, it follows that basic pattern I was describing. So the first part of the meditation is about quietening down the mind, inhibiting default mode network, getting into the the quiet, and then slowly building up using the mantras after that. So from that place. Just a quick comment on that. This is also research they've done with why psychedelics can be so effective therapeutically in terms of dealing with loads of different things, is that basically when you suggest something to the mind, if the mind is busy, so that the default mode is active and you're in your ego, even if you say the best, truest, most wise, amazing things, and you drop that in your mind, it will just get lost in the waves, and it'll just be more just stuff. If you manage to get to a place of absolute stillness, and this is what they've done with psilocybin research, where people have actually inhibited default mode network, you suggest the good thing, the good idea, the positive quality, the archetype, whatever it is, the love, the peace, etc. You drop it then, when the lake is still, and the stone drops all the way down, and it has a real effect from really deep within. So in terms of your body, your spirit, whatever. So that's the basic rationale. If you can basically get yourself in a state of quiet, where you're also you're suggestible. That's how psychedelics are so effective. It means that you're suggestible to, which can be for the good or bad. But the point is that by doing this consciously, we're giving ourselves good suggestions to then be able to gradually transform and cultivate and change ourselves for the better. So we're using that fact that you can become very open, vulnerable, not vulnerable necessarily, but kind of like receptive and suggestible in a way that we can consciously utilize it for constructive ends, which is why we use this frame. So I just wanted to finish with a couple of things about how this works in a setting where we actually actively using psychedelics, whether it's ayahuasca or psilocybin or psilocin or even cannabis. Actually, it's very effective just basically with cannabis, whether it's edible or you smoke it. You can get into an altered state where you amplify and magnify your suggestibility and your ability to go really quite deep. You can go very, very deep with this, with just a little bit of marijuana, basically. So whatever it is that you're using, you can use it to deepen the meditation, but on a larger scale. And this is also something that I'm also conducting, experimenting with. If you do it as a retreat, for a couple of day retreats, the beauty is that not only does it stay as a meditation, you actually go through the model one by one. So what we found when we've done this as a ceremony is that we begin with the mystic and we do the meditation, then we move to the shaman. And what happens is that we begin to practice the shamanic practices, as I alluded to in terms of the breath work, the energy, all this kind of stuff, the vocalizing, etc. Then we move to the warrior. And by the warrior, what happens is that embodiment then gets expressed through the body, gesture. So we begin to work with asanas, with movement, with, which then moves into dance. So then this is actually the direction of the thing, is that we go into the body and then we learn to actually use the body. So that goes into dance. And then we go to the monk, which then is about connecting with our hearts, with our emotions. So that then, as I said, the devotional aspect in terms of playing music, listening to music that touches you. So that develops the monk. This is kind of like the first section of the ceremony. And then we have a break. Generally, that's the end of the day. The next day, we come back and we reflect corpus mentis after, being kind of with more clarity on what happened during the process, what psychological dynamics there were, what we learned, we share what our experiences were, etc. So here we're in the jnana yoga of the philosopher, where we begin to integrate everything that's happened. So it's not just experiential that then just gets forgotten. We integrate, we articulate, we discuss things so that then it becomes something that we actually learn and we can take away, and that we can incorporate in our ongoing understanding and our knowledge of ourselves and of the practice. So that is the philosopher archetype, the jnana yoga. And then we finish with the raja yoga, with an exercise that I haven't had time to talk about here, which is a direct connection with your soul. So this is, we finish that, which which creates a nice kind of like closure, completion, and bringing everything down and grounding everything back. So that's just to give you a sense of how this, on that level, also works as a model, as a frame, as a kind of a map, really, to do the process with psychedelics in a group, in a constructive way that actually has progressive stages, that then you are actually cultivating all of these qualities one after the other. And that's basically the way it works. So that's just to give you a sense of that. So, it works on all sorts of different levels. All right, we've only got 10 minutes left. So any other questions? I guess people are writing them down. Someone said the pattern of white lines on the book cover has been curious to me, but now I understand it, says Tom. If you're not familiar with the book cover, I've got a copy here. So this is the book. So if you're interested in learning more, there we go. Thanks, Tom. And getting more detail, deeper into these ideas, this is the book for you, The Confessions of a Psychedelic Christian. That's my book. And here's the diagram, as I described, of the wheel with the 6 realms and the double cross as we use the practice. So there you go. That's the plug at the end there as well for the book. If you're interested, it's on Amazon. Maybe there's a link from here, but otherwise you can just search it up, Confessions of a Psychedelic Christian. All right. And Ruth is asking if I can link you to ceremonies that are on. Yep. Which retreats offer ceremonies that I described? Just mine. This is one of a kind. So it's just starting with the ceremonies, and I'm hoping that it will grow and take off. But at the moment, nobody else is doing this work the way that I'm doing it. So I am running ceremonies at the moment, probably monthly. So if anyone is interested, then you can get in touch with me, and then we can see, how many places. Obviously, with the COVID thing, it's getting a bit complicated because it has to be, maximum 6 and that kind of thing. So it's quite small scale still to begin with. So for the foreseeable future, it might be a bit overbooked. But if you are interested, do get in touch, and then I can put you on a waiting list or whatever for ceremonies as they come up. Hopefully, we'll be able to start doing them a little bit more regularly, maybe fortnightly. If you're interested in that, then get in touch. Any other things, questions? I'm based in London, by the way. So if you're interested in the ceremonies, it would help if you're in spitting distance of London at least, because otherwise, depending on how keen you are, obviously. Amir?
Yeah, I'm just curious if you can say any more just about the link, and maybe it's too big a question, the links to Christianity, those, apart from the kind of cross shape, a lot of the resources, let's say, were from Buddhism or Egyptian gods, this kind of thing.
Yeah.
In your own personal journey with this, to what extent is Christianity central or not?
Okay. Well, it's central in parallel for me personally, in that this is a tradition that I've reconnected with and I find incredibly useful and deep and powerful. And so then I use it in conjunction with this basic frame as well. The frame doesn't need to be necessarily a Christian thing, really. I mean, you don't have to have any Christian belief at all to use this, or any belief. It's just a technique, really. So as you say, exactly, the cross is maybe accidental, so it doesn't even have to have any Christian connotations. It's just a useful way to connect energetically. Having said that, I have reflected, and I talk about it a little bit in the book, on the different archetypes and the different yogas, particularly the four in the middle, because I didn't talk about the other two yogas, the Dhyana yoga and the Kundalini yoga of the mystic and shaman. But anyway, but the four in the middle do seem to fall. Basically the emphasis for Eastern traditions, Hinduism and Buddhism, maybe Sufism as well, compared to maybe more Western, let's say Christianity, maybe Islam, but basically the Christian thing, is that the Eastern one seems to be more focused on the diagonal of the warrior. Let me think about this for a second. Wait, there's the warrior king and the philosopher monk. Okay, all right. It's not so much an East-West thing, but basically, if you think of it in a Christian context, the philosopher monk is something that is very developed in Christianity. So I think that the monk of the devotional is very, very central. Obviously, it's very much about worship. It's very much about faith and prayer and this kind of stuff. So that's a very, and the philosopher being very intellectual, very rational. So those two elements in the Christian tradition, and in the way that Christianity developed from monasteries, which was basically this connection between the monk practice and the philosopher practice. So basically the Bhakti yoga, it's very Bhakti yoga, Christianity, very heart-based, emotional, that kind of thing, and very Jnana yoga. So it's basically Christian theology, the whole philosophical tradition is very, very deep. There's a lot of that kind of stuff. So those two are very, very central to Christianity, whereas the other two, the Karma yoga and the Raja yoga, are more Eastern, I'd say. So that the Karma yoga being the warrior, that a lot of the in terms of Hatha yoga, the different physical postures, but also if you think of the the martial arts of Japan and China, I mentioned the Shaolin, but all of the Japanese arts, the Tai Chi, this is all cultivating the warrior element and the energetic of the body, the flow, and then the Raja Yoga being a very direct way, very pure, for example, with Zen way of basically leapfrogging everything and going straight to the soul. So it's kind of more pure kind of spiritual essence that they kind of like point to, whereas the Western is a little bit more, I'd say, the Bhakti Jnana line. Anyway, that's just an observation, but just to kind of say another way in which is this model, in a sense, is trying to bring East and West together. So the best of the East that we're importing now, and that we've learned over the past few decades, that now is familiar with us. The concept of yoga, of meditation, all of these things we've kind of are now familiar in our own culture, but also reconnecting with our own indigenous culture, which is Christianity, which maybe we've left kind of to neglected a little bit, we've left to the side, which is the monk and the philosopher, which is reconnecting with a devotional element, with our emotional heart kind of connection, and with our intellect in terms of theology and in terms of thinking clearly and having a wider frame and connecting with the incredible legacy, what has been handed to us from centuries of wisdom that has been accumulated, wisdom and beauty, because that's the other thing. So the beauty, if you remember the virtues, beauty is associated with the monk element, which is the Karma yoga. So beauty is absolutely central to the Christian experience. If you think about the aesthetics of Christianity, like I've been very much recently getting into stained glass, which actually is incredibly psychedelic. If you think about it, if you look at some of these stained glass images, they're like you would see in, if you have visuals on a very strong psychedelic with the light and the color, absolutely gorgeous, beautiful, the beauty and the aesthetics of it. You think about the architecture, the music, so much of Christianity is actually about the art and is about the cultivation, development of beauty and the connection with emotion, with the aesthetic sense. So that also is a very central part, and that maybe, one way of thinking about Christianity in a broader sense, rather than it being dogmas and things that you believe and articles of faith and all that kind of stuff. It's not all of that. It's it's the whole thing that has been handed down to us. All of the incredible beautiful artifacts that have been handed down, and the amazing works of philosophy and speculative theology and all the rest of it. Amazing stuff. Read Augustine or Aquinas or whatever. William Law, all these great mystics. They're just incredible. You read them and they've just been left, to gather dust, but absolutely like wells of wisdom and which we have in our own tradition. So that's I hope that answers that. Yeah, I'm trying to bring the East and West back together. Together. Yeah. Well, thanks for joining me.